and charities received about $2.5 billion by way of exemptions.
Oh, no. 2.5 by way of donations. So that would be your rattling the bucket type stuff. And 14.5 from income. It's just general income. So it would be from investments and so on.
So I was just trying to think, the Productivity Commission estimated the cost to the public purse and charities in Australia was anywhere between 4 and 8 billion.
Yeah,
that seems low compared to New Zealand.
And that's when you mentioned that before, that seemed low to me. Yeah. But I'd have to say, you know, before we existed, all of this was a guess. Whereas what we're getting now is those figures are the ones that have come from that form that you were looking through.
Yes, it's an important point, I think, because if we don't understand the public funding that's going into charities, we can't make judgments about what regulation should be there. Really.
Well, it makes it very difficult. And you know, I mean, I was mentioning that fundraising exercise, 900,000 in amounts raised. If you were to apply the tax exemption to that, if you were to give the full tax exemption and then look at the 6,000 that was given out, you're looking at the cost of government providing a grant for a particular activity.
Does your organisation have general community support now?
Do we have
community support?
Yes, look, I think it's improved. I'll give you an example. We're running some forums around the country at the time being, and one of the good things we can do is very quickly send out invitations. Something before, well, as we were getting established, would have taken me months to do. I can do now instantaneously. We're running 6 forums around Auckland in this coming week, or this week, and we've got something like 1,000 charities turning up to them. And this is to talk about sort of us. And the feedback we're getting, something like 90% of the responses for feedback put it as either valuable or very valuable. And I'm talking to people from local government who go to these forums and say, you know, we're seeing people we didn't know existed in our communities. And I think these people are coming to the forums because they've got now a much better ability to network with each other. And we've got a very good ability now to be able to send material out to charities. So, for example, when our Reserve Bank was wanting to put something out for issuers, we can look at what's the characteristics of an issuer and send out Reserve Bank material just to those people. If someone's looking at a reduction in the fees for bank cards, what we can say to them is, tell us the characteristics of an organisation that will have a bank card in order to receive donations or because of trading, and we can target information that will go out to those organisations. So from my point of view, I look at the fact that yes, we are a regulator, but with the information that we've got, how can we make this beneficial to the sector? And I think because of that last bit, which is getting support over a pretty short period of time for what we're doing.
And the major religions, you know, are involved in massive amounts of charity work, and the money that's coming from government to them, lots of it goes back out again, or all of it goes back out depending on what charity. Can you measure that? Because isn't that an important part of how a charity is operating effectively? Well,
we will be able to. The only problem with the church, well, it's not a problem, is that a lot of money that comes into the church is for the people who run the church, so for the ministers and so on. And so we can look at what's the cost of that to the church. What we then have to look at, and this is where the financial reporting standards may assist, is that though that when you go out and do your, if you like, non-religious work, your welfare work, your education work, can we separate out that activity within your accounts? And then we can better see where what money's coming in and where it's going to within the church environment.
So if a charity breaches workplace laws, a charity breaches minimum wage, or a charity, operates in such a way that the public benefit is diminished, when do you then say that public benefit is diminished to the extent that you shouldn't be a charity any longer? And what is the process that you would undertake?
Right. Well, the first part is that if they are breaking those other laws and someone came to us, we will quickly refer them to the appropriate jurisdiction for that. If we see persistent breaking of laws, then we will send them a letter which will say we intend to deregister you, and we will go through a proper process around that. So, for example, we've seen one organisation where we think there was fraud, and so again we went through the process of deregistration, and that was deregistered. You don't want to have a situation where they've broken one law, for example. They may have inappropriately paid youth rates or whatever. To see that and say, right, we're going to deregister you. So it would have to be persistent. In other words, we would raise the issue, we would expect them to correct it, and then they would move on. But if they didn't correct it, or if they kept persisting in that sort of behaviour, then we would move to deregister for those reasons.
I'm hesitant to ask this, but how would you deal with, I suppose I have to ask the question, how would you deal with persistent child molestation from an organisation that sets itself, that gets a benefit as a charity? How do you deal with that?
Well, fortunately, we haven't had any examples of that. I think our first port of call with child molestation would be to go to the police. So we have developed links with other law enforcement agencies, and we would think that's starting to take us beyond our ability to respond to that particular complaint. And if that was, and if the police saw that and found that was systemic within the organisation, then we would look to see how we could act with that as well. So we wouldn't tolerate something like that, but we wouldn't want to carry out an investigation which may lead to a deregistration if we thought there was a more serious criminal activity taking place.
So you would work hand in glove with the police authorities?
Yes.
On an issue like that?
Yeah, and so in that case that would be police. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was a local op shop where someone came to us to say, we think someone's nicking money, the person behind the till. And we've taken it up with management, and we've taken it up with the board, and they've told us that, look, just go away. This group, there are a lot of little Miss Marples, I think, but they went and they purchased something and got a receipt, went in the next day, and the receipt had been torn out of the receipt book. So they said, well, what do we do? And so we helped them go to the police about that. And what the police say to us is that the difficulty they have with charities is that everyone thinks everyone is doing good. And if someone starts nicking money, they don't go to the police because she's been such a lovely lady and just given such neat service, and they let them quietly go away. And they quietly go away often to another organisation and go and do the same thing again. So what we will do is, where we think there's criminal wrongdoing, is either get the complainant to go to the police, or we will go to the police. But we will take it to an appropriate place.
Do you have a statement of charitable purpose that organisations have to give to you?
No, we don't at this stage. And that, again, that's something which we think about. I mean, they come back to us with their annual return, and if they've changed their purposes, then they need to let us know. So any rule change, they let us know, and we will reassess them. What we are looking at is how do we get the organisation to satisfy, if you like, the public that they're doing charitable things, and we haven't quite got that far yet.
Isn't that a very difficult thing? Don't the public make donations on the basis that you've ticked them off,
Yes.
and that gives them some respectability, but the public really don't know if they put money in the tin can what's happening, do they?
Yeah. Well, and part of what we're looking at is how can we educate the public to be better donors?